well, I've got 12:32, so why don't we go ahead and kick this off. Hello, this is Alvaro Gonzalez. I'm AVP of Channel at TierPoint. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us for the second of our new series of TierPoint 101 for Channel Partners webinars. Today's topic is DR as a service. It's one where we have had a great deal of success and are really proud of what we're doing. So our hope and expectation is by investing a little bit of time with us today, we can help to fuel you also having greater success in having these conversations with your customers and prospects, working with us to have a great win for everybody. Also joining me on the line is going to be Dale Levesque, who's the product line director for this offering here at TierPoint. We wanted to go through the presentation component of this, and then at the end we'll have plenty of time for questions that either Dale and I can field for you. So I actually would like to start kind of just with a quick commercial overall for TierPoint, because something that I hear really often in talking with partners and customers is people telling me, gosh, you know, I know some of the things that you do, but I didn't realize that you do all of that. So, you know, we'll take a moment just to look at the fact that we offer actually a really complete suite of solutions, because we made a very conscious decision at a time when a lot of service providers in the industry are focusing more and more on doing one thing. So, you know, in our opinion, that is not the most constructive thing to do for customers. It's not what people ask us for. So we decided to really be committed to being in the business, not of selling a narrow set, a kind of piece part solutions, but instead to be in the business of doing, as I like to talk about it, three things. The first, we solve problems that our prospects and customers are facing. Everyone is always facing higher expectations, more demands, more competition. And so us working at that intersection of information technology and business, people have, you know, lots of problems that they want help getting solved, and that's what we have decided to do. The thing is, there are lots of complicated ways to solve problems. We decided to simplify, deal with the technologies that people use to get to these outcomes. And part of that bet that we've made is by having a really broad set of capabilities. People don't have to try to figure out how multiple piece parts from different sources fit together. We problems and simplify by being able to design solutions that go end to end. The thing then that we decided and we've bet on is we look to be valued because we give value beyond just selling something. The capabilities that we have, the work that we do, just like what you guys actually do, our channel partner community, is to not say, hey, you want to buy a watch, but rather to say, let's talk about the business that you're in, the objectives that you have, the obstacles in your way, and what you're trying to do to get there. So we understand that, you know, like us, every company is at a different point in the digital or IT transformation, and so we have this broad set of capabilities ranging from 43 data centers around the nation through a multitude of different cloud platforms, network services, security and compliance, disaster recovery, and managed services to be able to meet all kinds of prospects and businesses where they are to help them get where they're trying to go. This is something as well that people are pretty familiar with seeing from us. It is our list. We have, you know, again, a very broad set of capabilities that we have in our comprehensive solution suite. And on the one hand, the detail matters. So on the left-hand side of this, you know, we do have a pretty good spelling out of our capabilities, and this is something that we'll be happy to provide to you guys, these presentation slides after the fact. But ultimately, these, you know, this big set of capabilities is organized around three ideas. The first of them is providing resiliency, be it in security and compliance or in disaster recovery. You know, the second ring around transformation, taking where you are today and getting to the new and updated, more advantageous ways of conducting your affairs so that IT can be a source of strategic advantage. And then finally, being able to work at the edge, because ultimately all the capabilities in the world, if they're too far away or you can't get to them, are really not all of that useful. So it's, very complete approach. As far as doing good work, though, don't just take our word for it. We'll touch on the first of these here in more detail in a second, but in 2018, for the third year in a row, TierPoint was recognized as a challenger in Gartner's latest Magic Quadrant for Disaster Recovery as a Service. And some of the things that you can see, this write-up is available to you, that they've recognized are tied to two things that we'll touch on some more. One of them is superior customer care, and the other of them actually is around the flexibility of the solutions that we offer. So we'll see this in more detail in a minute. In the middle section of my slide, though, here, we also have a set of recognitions from another of the really big names in the analyst community, the Forrester Wave. In this case, one of them is recognition in the strong performer section in private clouds, which is something that's really important strategic bet of ours and that we're having really tremendous success with. And then as well, the other one is for disaster recovery as a service. We have a lot of the great third-party validation of the work that we're doing in general and in these two fields in particular. Finally, all of us here on this call are people who work in the channel. I think everybody knows who CRN is. We do have also a great string of multiple years now of recognition in the various CRN awards. This is a small world, ultimately, this channel world that we work in, and people who don't do good work, who don't look out for end customers and for partners, have real trouble putting together strings of successes. This is something we're very proud that we've done. So now more specifically into the DR as a service component that we have for today, part of it is I wanted to take a moment to kind of build out a little bit of talk track around what DR as a service is in general and some details around how we do it that are noteworthy, and then finally look at kind of the sales dimension of this. So starting out from kind of the ground up, some people know and some people don't, that DR as a service really has some very basic ingredients to it. You primary your source site or sites where the workloads that you want to protect are. You have the replication platform in the middle, and that's platform and the process, in our case, the work that's being done and not just the tool set that you use to get the workload from the source environment and to the protected location that is the recovery site. And then finally, that recovery or target site or sites where protected workloads are stored and they can be brought into use in the case of a disaster. So two really fundamental metrics of DR as a service are the RTO, or recovery time objective, and that is how long would it take to get a workload back to operational in the event of a disaster. RTO, how long would it take? And then the RPO, recovery point objective, how much data would I lose if I had to do this? People for a long time had as their disaster recovery position coming from backups, and so your RTO would be a function of how long it would take to get the tapes back and to restore them in. That was a really big window, and your RPO would be limited by were these daily, weekly, monthly, whatever the backup interval was. Now things are a great deal more aggressive, and so the values change, the metrics don't. And then finally, I'd say about this in general that, best practice more and more that businesses' applications are being divided increasingly into kind of several different tiers of importance based on the business impact of being without that application. And then there's an effort to shape what's spent on DR protection to protect given workloads based on how important they are to the business, right? So for this reason, options and flexibility are really important in our conversations. Now, there are a lot of people, a lot of service providers doing work in this DR work area, this kind of area of operations, and many you'll find that there are people who are pretty good at one part of this, or maybe two parts of it, but not necessarily a broad suite at all. As it turns out, actually, at TierPoint, our core offerings include being able to protect cloud to cloud. So in this case, this would be virtualized workloads into our recovery environments. That will be VMware, could potentially be Hyper-V as well, into our managed recovery infrastructure. We can provide server to cloud, and that can be for non-virtualized workloads. This would be, running on servers without any virtualization in place into our protected infrastructure. We can also provide, and this is something that now is starting to get really increasingly differentiated for us, in DR services for IBM, iSeries, or Unix workloads as well. We on as well Azure Site Recovery Protection to be able to use a target environment that is different from ours, and then some other capabilities around that. So back to considerations of where the source is then and where the targets can be. Our DR as a service offerings, our sources can be in our clouds, in our colocation, in third-party colocation, or in customer prem as well. We can protect out of all the above, actually. As far as the recovery sites are concerned as well, because we can provide these protections in a variety of different workbeds, some, for example, into dedicated infrastructure, some of it for purpose-specific multi-tenant infrastructure, some into Azure if needed. We actually can also protect to a variety of different recovery sites, so that we were talking about before in the idea of the edge, that all the capabilities in the world, if they're too far away, if they're not where you need them to be, are of limited usefulness to you or to your customers. We protect workloads out of practically anywhere and can protect them into a really broad set of different locations. From a platform perspective, some of the tool sets and the infrastructure we use to provide these protections as well. We certainly are big Zerto shop, have Veeam-centered offerings, Carbonite double-take offerings, and Azure Site Recovery, other tool sets used to protect IBM-centric workloads. In short, protect, again, workloads of different types from many different places with a number of different tool sets that allow us to work with different priorities, different needs of the protection, and protect them in to different places. In talking about this stuff, though, it's easy to really go down the path of a lot about capabilities and what we can do. I think it's also really important to spend some time talking about what we have done and what we are doing, right? So starting out with, I would say, DR as a service at TierPoint is not a hobby. We actually have greater than 1,000 customers today purchasing DR as a service offerings from us. Some of those environments are big and some of them are small because, businesses demand flexibility. They want to be able to shape their expense based on the value that they get out of it. So, 12,000 plus workloads in aggregate protected today by TierPoint. Zerto is, from a platform perspective, sort of the 800-pound gorilla in this and TierPoint is a platinum tier partner. We are actually one of their 5 largest environments in the world in the service provider community. So all of this, we have a really serious track record, a record of achievement and infrastructure to be able to deliver on the promises that we make when we go to sell and offer DR as a service. Our largest current environment today is 274 VMs with 11 terabytes of storage. This is a question that when I've spoken with people, be they end user customers or partners, people always want to know, what does a big environment look like to you guys? 274 VMs is a good environment. 11 terabytes is a pretty good environment. Things I would call out about this, though, are those 38 SQL workloads that are called out in that largest current environment. SQL workloads, these database workloads are oftentimes really important line of business applications. These are being heart of the business kind of workloads. That's a really significant thing to notice about that. And at the same time, the 9 Docker VMs that are in this as well. Docker is something that is not necessarily very widely supported or understood very well, even among the service provider community, but we are able to accommodate that sort of thing. You can look, though, here to the right and see we actually have 2 environments that are going engagements right now that are getting brought in, and see that our 274 VMs, that's a nice environment. There are much, much larger deals now that have been coming into the pipeline for us over the last year or so. So comparing, the big one we have today with an 800 VM, an 85 terabyte, or, 1900 VM and 400 terabyte environment, something's going on. What is it that explains something that could see such big growth, going from large being, what is 274 to 800 or 1900 VMs? What's going on there? Traditionally, DR as a service is something that has grown up for us, like for all service providers, as an SMB-focused offering initially. Bigger businesses have always tended to have multiple locations, more people, more revenue, more budget, and kind of more tendency to think and to want to control things themselves. A SMB, times when DR would cost 100 to 125% as much as the production workloads, DR as a service was something that was revolutionary for that space, because otherwise, more often than not, SMB couldn't afford to really do DR for themselves. The last several years, though, what's happened is service providers have built up practice and expertise and have become a known quantity through, for example, third-party validation, so that to business, the risk of outsourcing DR as a service has come down as it's become more of a known quantity to them, and the value of getting those things off of having to do them themselves and put into an outsourced environment has been coming up, right? You can see also kind of this really strong tendency in IT general, the sorts of things that we do in particular around the 2 larger environments that are in progress here. You'll notice they both say that these are Nutanix production environments. This Nutanix platform is interesting. This will be more relevant here in just a moment, because hyperconverged infrastructure in general is so something aligned with business wanting to now get out of deal complexity, focus on technology solutions that give them simplicity so that they can focus on adding value to the business. And here in these 2 big deals that we have in the pipeline, kind of all those things are converging. They're much larger businesses, they're much larger environments, and they're coming out of Nutanix beds more. And, third-party validation is something that is really significant. Large businesses are the ones who subscribe to services from Gartner, from Forrester, from all of these analyst communities. And because, for the 3rd year in a row, we, among other providers, are in here, this has meant that we have established a significant track record of capability that has kind of really taken the risk out of looking at doing DR as a service with a TierPoint. We can see here, the 10 providers that are on the Magic Quadrant that came out last summer, and so the 2019 one will be coming out likely June, July of this year as well. We're in that process as well. The 10 are on the grid here are among hundreds of companies that could have qualified for inclusion, but for one reason or another, just didn't make the cut. Really proud of this status. We are positioned as one of the top 4 that's on here from the ability to execute, which ultimately is probably, the most important attribute of all. You want to have completeness of vision, and that's something that we have an excellent story to tell. But if you have a complete vision, but you're not very good at executing, that makes you the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, that are my football team. Not the best place in the world to be. This write-up in particular, we were very proud of. The Gartner write-up including mention that the customer references as part of this process for us had scored us the highest satisfaction in this year's Magic Quadrant. Our customers ultimately are the judge of our success or failure. It's something that we're very proud of. And then finally, out of this as well, other element of the write-up that's significant, noteworthy, and intentional on our part was that they recognized us for our flexibility in customizing DR as a service solutions to fit clients' unique needs. Now, taking a minute, though, to talk about the things that we have on the roadmap. Business never stops moving forward, and we can't either. Actually, it's interesting to that point. If you look at the last couple years of Magic Quadrants, for example, in DR as a service, there are names that kind of come and go. Generally, the ones who go, it's because they have underinvested in innovation and being up to date and trying to anticipate the needs of customers. We're really proud of the fact that we do have this roadmap baked out for what we're doing in DR as a service, including training to add additional capability. Today, almost everyone's focus in DR as a service is at the operating system or the hypervisor level. The reason for that is there are a lot of moving parts to do DR as a service well. This up to now has been to focus on providing that at a controlled level with relatively few very well-known attributes. And that would be especially around VMware, especially around Windows and Linux operating systems, because applications don't interact as directly with the stuff that you need to see to capture transactions for DR as a service. Application-centric DR has been a great deal harder. This is something, though, that we are working on rolling out to add additional capabilities on that. Another 2 I will call out especially significant additions. First of these is we are also adding later this year provision for Nutanix Acropolis environments. Nutanix in that hyperconverged infrastructure field is the runaway leader in hyperconverged infrastructure, according to all of the analysts. They are doing an excellent job, recognized and growing insanely quickly because of the good work that they're doing. They do have their own hypervisor, this AHV, that they have produced. A lot of people, now that it's becoming more of a known quantity, are beginning to transition from running Nutanix platforms relying on VMware, their hypervisor, to support Acropolis, this AHV platform. We're adding AHV support for production and for DR, and including as well, there's an inbuilt capability in Acropolis to provide near real-time replication for DR as a service that has, for Nutanix fans, really significant operational attractiveness and some cost benefits as well. These are on the roadmap for us to bring out later this year. And the last of these that I'll call out is, I had mentioned before, and it's not very widely available from other providers, but today TierPoint can provide DR coverage for IBM, call it server-level microcomputer workloads, iSeries, Power AIX things. We are bringing forward for later this year in the spring, DR as a service for IBM Z-Series mainframe platforms. This is something that, while it's not going to be something there will be an enormous addressable community to go and sell this to, this is part of the industries and our move to also be able to protect environments of larger and larger companies. We're very excited about all the things on our roadmap, two things in particular. Then over for a moment, all of this stuff is great. Again, everyone can tell you all day long about the things that they can do, but ultimately all of us are here, generally speaking, not because it's interesting to know all of these things, but rather we're here because we have businesses and we make money by being valuable in solving problems. So what do deals look like that TierPoint has been conducting around DR as a service? I have three examples I want to walk through for a second. First of them, and whenever we close a new deal here, our Vice President of Sales Operations, Aaron, puts out our ring the bell messages to people. So the first example I wanted to look at is one out of our Northeast, Arthi Comstock, is a very high-performing AE among a bunch of them that we've got, but out of the New York City office, here is a deal that she, working with the SE out of that office as well, with Alex, closed at the end of December for $41,000 a month in round numbers. It all went into this. I started out talking about the ability of TierPoint to interact with solving customer problems and to have a broad set of capabilities to be able to interact with customers' needs, solutions, and not for DR as a service. In this case, a conversation that started around some resiliency questions turned into a deal that was hosted private cloud, our IP offering, which is a managed security offering, as a service for archival or long-term retention of data in particular, more than kind of active application traffic. This ICX that's on here is our interfacility connectivity. Server migration, this is a professional services engagement on the front end to actually get all of these workloads into our infrastructure. Multi-tenant cloud to be able to handle seasonality or to just be able to take some cost out of serving applications that don't need dedicated infrastructure. As a service, in this case, to provide this resiliency. And finally, co-location. So effectively, every part of our service offerings is reflected in this deal, from the co-location in the two different data centers here in our Chicago West and Raleigh data centers to house everything. In it because customers sometimes have, for contractual reasons, for example, the obligation to have dedicated physical servers for some customers, or storage that they have that they've bought but is not paid off. Fine, this is accommodated. And then the ability to have dedicated gear for some of their production, multi-cloud for other parts of production, to get it in there, secure it, have data protection and resiliency with DRaaS around it. There's a lot of different moving pieces as well. Obviously, you guys are seeing this. Important to reiterate that because TierPoint does many things, it can be intimidating to look at this and say, my God, how do you do that? That looks really complicated. We're here, though, to sell with and even sell for you, right? This is the part deal that we're looking at. And you'll see that Arthi and Alex were kind of the two people leading the charge from our side, working with this partner. We also had all kinds of people up and down the chain on our side supporting this effort going forward. From Joel Dupree, channel director out of that part of the country, our director of security product management, our corporate counsel, our RVP, all sorts of people. And the final detail I want to point out to you around this one is, this was for a payment system solution provider. Reg compliance is something that both is very important to our business in general and very important to DR in particular. When you see payment system solution provider, this is a PCI application, right? Important detail and something that's very reflective of the kind of business that we do. The simple deal, though, is I started mentioning before that DR as a service has grown up initially in our industry as an SMB play. Not every deal is $40,000, but not every customer either of that size. There are lots of like singles and doubles that are excellent business for us and for our partners. Here's an example from Josh Hirsch out of our Baltimore office for $3,200 a month that you can see. This one, although it does have, again, a really complete solution suite in it of multi-tenant cloud, backup as a service, clean IP, managed antivirus, and operating system management, along with DR as a service in 2 of our data centers, one in Lenexa and the Kansas City area, and one in Valley Forge. Again, in this case, is a partner worked by another of our channel directors, Vanessa Bird, also out of that kind of DC area, and a great win. This is something that a partner had an opportunity, brought it to us, and we worked together and used our complete suite of offerings to give a great solution. Examples I wanted to show to you is that in our business, what we see over and over again is people come and they buy something initially, but those of you who have a lot of experience working in cloud applications, that sort of thing in general, know there is an initial purchase, then people observe the value of it, have greater success, so they come back and they buy more. It's a little different. I had sort of misspent youth in doing this telecom, and the growth trajectory there wasn't necessarily the same as it is here. There are examples of people who have their initial buy, and then they come back and they purchase more. That's exactly what we have going on here. In this case, this is one that is not a new customer. This is actually an upgrade for a current customer who actually bought a private cloud for production and DR as a service. And because the business added additional demand, they did more business, they have also bought an upgrade for both production and for DR as a service, adding $5,900 a month and using 2 of our data centers, one in Little Rock and one in Chicago West. Partners and those of you who have experience with us over time know that when you bring us an opportunity, we go and we win it together, and it becomes commissionable to you. The upgrades that are tied to those sales are also commissionable to you. So in this case, a sale like this is a nice downstream increase for a partner who had brought this deal around. The thing to point out about this one as well is you can see this was for an electronic health records practice management surgical coding company. In this case, this is something that's interacting with HIPAA, healthcare regulatory compliance needs. All of the cases more and more in general, but specifically around PCI and HIPAA, there is a high need to have DR as a service protection, and this is why we see a lot of wins around areas. I'm saying up to now that we try to do first facing customers is to be in the business of solving business problems, and so you should always feel completely comfortable having very business-focused conversations to find opportunities for TierPoint. It's very uncommon to run across business challenges that we're not going to be able to help with, right? At the same time, I think that for a lot of people, I hear it all the time, the fact that we do have a lot of different capabilities can be really intimidating. The thought of, gosh, I go and I start asking questions, and I don't want to get in over my head. I don't want to get over my skis. So how do I manage that? On one hand, really, especially around DR as a service, there are ways to ask about 3 specific things that'll really kick off a good and a substantial DR question. The first of them is around the impact, and this is a business thing. What will be the financial impact to your business of a service outage? In my experience in doing this for a long time, companies know. Some companies think they know. Some companies know that they don't. Maybe this is in a third, but when your question is timely, there always is a substantial conversation to be out of it. And ultimately, you're not talking about you, you're talking about them. This is around targets, and this ties up to impact. What are your organization's recovery time and recovery point objectives? One thing that's absolutely true about technology and business, and that is that over time, more things have become possible. What this is that more things have become expected. It used to be that restoring from tape was an okay DR posture. That is no longer the case. In doing DR as a service, the way that TierPoint does it, we can be talking about recovery time objectives of as little as 15 minutes and recovery point objectives of under a minute. These are very, very significant improvements for most businesses' DR posture, being expense out of it. And then the final thing is testing. When was the last time you tested your DR plan, and was it successful? Not this, horse, but I think all of us can agree, biz always moves on and it always goes faster. A lot of people started to have DR as a service focused plans in place 2 years ago and signed a contract. Over the period of time, what we see over and over again is that the business moves on. There are new applications. There are more applications. And the plan doesn't keep up with reality. And so this is an excellent question to ask people, because people should be testing their DR plan, and more often than not, DR plans have a way of failing if they're not in a good place. You being one of the people helping a business arrive at that conclusion is doing them an enormous service, because God knows it's better to fail a test than it is fail in live fire. 3 simple questions, really business-focused, that you can use to kick off conversations around DR as a service. A final point about this to kind of preview also some of the things that people talk about around this. People have historically had the idea that disasters are a smoking crater. They are a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, or something like that. Anyone who pays close attention to the news now, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, I know of a number of different business leaders who feel like they're whistling by the graveyard as they see stories about ransomware or things like that that are now a far more frequent source of disasters that drive a need for disaster recovery. There are many kinds of disasters, and even if the applications that you're protecting haven't changed, the changes and threats to those applications could have changed. It's a very valuable conversation, even turns into nothing. So we are 43 minutes into our hour here. So to begin with, say again, thank you for joining us today. Your feedback really is a gift. So we'd ask what questions might anyone want to ask now, but then B, also anything that's come up that you want to discuss further, please do contact your TierPoint channel director or me personally to talk about it. And then finally, to preview that the next webinar we'll be doing probably about 6 weeks from now will be on the offerings with Nutanix that TierPoint is bringing forward. But any questions that you have, Dale, are you out there as well? We'd be really happy to field. So I answered all the questions before people had them. seems might be the case. So if that is so, or if you have questions that you just prefer to have a private conversation, maybe just let us close by saying thanks again for joining us today. Oh. We know that. Go ahead.
Sorry, Alvaro. This is Dale. I was thinking I didn't realize my mute was on here. I do see Brian has a question here. He raised his hand. Do you have the permissions to unmute him?
Let me see. Sorry, my presentation, I can't see that screen.
Oh, hey. Thank you for the overview, or just kind of going deeper into, when I've been working a lot with Jameson Brown here, we're getting a better, completing, and we're working with now on a pretty sizable opportunity. But Mike came across, I don't know if y'all saw, but can you get this information, or just all proprietary information regarding what's going on internally? Or I know notes. I know you're working on the Nutanix platform and different. I know that's just all information.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we can absolutely share that this is the price. We always are actually working in advance of the fully launched, the productized versions of things. And so, in fact, some of those things, the exception in this case would be the BMZ series stuff. But other parts of that, we're actually doing them as kind of customer requested one-offs today. So, I think that, I don't know if you see it differently, but there's no obstacle for us actually saying that these are capabilities and these are things that are on the roadmap for a fully productized launch this year.
Sure, there's always the caveat, right? Hey, the roadmap can change, but to your point, a number of things we're already doing as a one-off basis, and we're just working to industrialize them now.
Yep. If you would like, you can send me an email to follow up about that, or ask Jameson or Therese, who is our channel director in that region. Also, I don't know if you know Therese McGovern, but happy to talk with you about some deliverables about that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can't spot here. Feel completely free to follow up with channel directors or with me personally for more discussion of any of this stuff. Thanks again for the time today, and do be on the lookout for the invitation coming for the next one. Again, we're kind of anticipating this about 6 weeks out from now to then talk about things that we are doing for both production and then coming industrialized DR and AHV support as well. And thanks for what you do with us. We're not confused about how our success is your success.